and welcome to Religion and Life. I'm your host, Ozzy Ostwald. Music plays an important role in religious ritual, and music has a rich history in the liturgies and worship experiences in the Christian church. From the organ music of Bach to the soaring voices of a sacred choir, music has the ability to move worshipers to transcendent states. My guests today, Dr. Joby Bell and Dr. Priscilla Porterfield, are intimately involved in teaching about and performing that music which has moved millions. Welcome, Joby and Priscilla. Thank you so much. Both faculty members here at Appalachian State University in the Hayes School of Music. And I'll just have you introduce yourselves. Joby, you go first, and Priscilla, tell us what you're doing, what you do here, how long you've been here, and so forth.
I'm the professor of organ and of sacred music. I head up that sacred music curriculum, and I've been doing that here for 20 years. But I'm also a member of the class of 1990, so I'm a mountaineer from way back.
Oh, great.
And I ran off to graduate school and came back 14 years later. Here I am all this time.
You have a long history here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm Dr. Priscilla Porterfield, and I've been here for 34 years. I've done a variety of things, but I have, since my first year here, the second semester of my first year in 1991, I was asked to take the treble choir and direct it. And we probably will talk about the history of the treble choir, but at the time it was not a thing, and they asked me to take it up, and I have enjoyed being part of the choral faculty ever since. And so I'm also on the voice faculty, teaching in individual applied voice lessons, and have done some chairing of the area through the years, and teaching diction classes as well.
Wow.
For the voice major.
Well, you two do very different things. You're a voice teacher and organist, but what you have in common, at least in my mind, when I think about sacred music, I always think about organs and choirs. So that's why I asked you here today to talk about that a little bit. But I wanted to start by talking about what it takes to be a music major. I know when I was in college, my roommate was a music major, and I was always amazed. He was doing his schoolwork like I was, and then he would go off and practice for hours a day. Can you talk about the challenges of studying in college and being a major in music as well?
Well, music majors know who they are, and for them to go through the motions of auditioning and presenting themselves on an instrument and hoping to get in, and then committing to all that practice time is pretty indicative that they just know who they are. And in my case, I grew up around music. I grew up in a church, and I was used to music all my life, and then as a keyboardist, one thing led to another. My fingers got more adept as the years went by, and then the organ began to beckon me away from the piano, and one thing led to another, and before you knew it, I was majoring in it and then making a career of it. But I hear a lot of students who have been inspired by a music teacher to pursue music, particularly our music education majors. It's usually a band director who has inspired them either with good leadership or good role modeling, or with outright encouragement to say, yes, you could be a fine teacher, go for it.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, and on that subject, many times they are high school teachers, and family members can be encouraging of the performance aspect of someone. So for instance, I have degrees in performance, and I so agree with Joby that many times music majors know who they are, and there's sort of an identity within your instrument, whether it's organ or whether it's voice, and there's a discipline that often comes with that because you've been practicing for years before you even come to college. But I'm a product of public school system that had great choral program in it. Even though I did come from a denomination where there was no choir and no instruments in the worship service. It was all just the voices. But I came from a musical family, and they encouraged singing and encouraged instrumental playing. And then a teacher in high school who actually sought out and found opportunities for me to perform in the summertime at camps, and that shaped me by the time I was in college.
Yeah. It's interesting how many of the students, not only in music but elsewhere, have been inspired somewhere along the way by a teacher, and it's probably partly what brings us to this profession in the first place. Yeah. So I know some of the students you teach go on to work in churches. Probably a lot of the students you teach in the sacred music program go on to work professionally in churches. Do they? The ones who go on to either be a choir director or an organist or both, do they also get divinity degrees, or they just go straight into the church?
Very few of my students have gone to divinity school. I can count one, I think, in 20 years. There might be a couple more, but most of them go directly into a church, and they tend to stay put for a while. They're very grounded where they've chosen to go. A lot of them have wanted to go closer to home, or they want to go to their favorite big city, but they do tend to stay there. And of course, during college and during high school, for that matter, they are already working in the church, doing very much what they'll be doing anyway after graduation. But we just give them a little more cognizance of what happens in a church, especially between Sundays,
right.
Which is considerable. But yeah, divinity school has. I got to think about this. A few of them go to get a higher degree in church music, but they remain a music major doing that. But I think only one has gone to divinity school, and I just heard from him. He's now pastoring a church in Cincinnati, and I'm very proud of him. Yeah.
It's a little bit different for the singer, although singers are entwined tightly with keyboardists. So I guess given the fact that I've been at Appalachian for a long time, I can speak to the fact that many go on to often a seminary for either an additional music degree or sometimes a master's in divinity. And I've known of several who have done that, and they sometimes use that for administrative work in churches. I would have to say there were more in the past as far as the singers who would go to seminary than there are now. And I think that's because the music in the churches has changed.
Yeah, and I want to come back to that in a little bit and talk about how the music has changed a little bit. But Joby, you said something that I want to follow up on. You said you try to make your students a little more cognizant of what happens between Sundays, and I'm guessing that you're referring to the student who becomes a musician in a church is held to a higher standard than the person in the pew. Maybe not as high a standard as the person in the pulpit, but certainly. They're on stage and they're representing the church. Is that what you were referring to?
It's true. My curriculum seeks to make the student conversant in basic language that they would encounter, depending on the denomination they may work in. Generally they come to me with only one tradition under their belt, and I help them learn what I call how to speak Methodist or how to speak Episcopal as needed, so that they learn what a bishop is and what a bishop does, and they know what that church down the street from their house is now all about. So this is an undergraduate curriculum, and so there's a lot of practical imparting of knowledge to them, and it just makes them conversant, if depending on which major denomination they choose to work in. But yes, I also train them that if all they've ever seen are Sunday mornings, then there's plenty to learn about what happens Monday through Friday, or even Saturday. as far as meetings, setting up tables, preparing rehearsals and dealing with sick choir members or busted seams in a choir robe or something like that. There's always something that has to be dealt with, and it's not always musical. But just to get them conversant, to know what to expect when they walk into a certain denomination or a certain church nearby, they know what to do, whom to speak to, how to address the clergy, etc.
So, is the concentration in sacred music here, is that unusual for a public university? Did you start it?
I did not. My teacher, Max Smith, who got here in 1969,
I've
started.
heard all about
you've
Max
heard
Smith,
about Max Smith.
Yeah.
He got here in 1969, and he founded the sacred music program. That's a very interesting question because as a state-supported institution,
right,
how do you get by with teaching church music? And the answer to that is well, multifaceted, but this is a full-service school of music, as it were, and we teach all forms of music as art and as possible gainful employment. And yes, it would be ill-advised of us to try to to proselytize on behalf of any denomination for students, but as professional musicians, we train the students in musical excellence, no matter what music they're choosing to study. I would also point out that even in the music history classes, students go all the way back to the medieval church, which is where our Western music traditions began. The notion of singing two different parts at the same time is medieval church. We get most all of it from Gregorian chant. Like I say to my students, studying the music of the medieval church is just part of a full service study of music. And without the medieval church, we wouldn't have Billy Joel today. I always enjoy
I like
telling
that
them
connection.
that.
And it's I guess it's a little similar to teaching religion in a public university. And sometimes our students don't recognize that what we're doing in the university is different from what they're used to in the church. So what about treble choir? I know that the treble choir is not solely dedicated to sacred music, but this is quite important. And maybe you can say a little bit about that and a little bit about the treble choir here at Appalachian.
Sure. Well, all of the choirs here, and I think at most college institutions, realize the importance of including sacred choral literature as a part of their repertoire. I think it's important for the students to be exposed to that because of the beauty and the volume of gorgeous choral music. And so I always include it in the, maybe not every concert, but certainly in what they're exposed to through the semester. I would say that they don't always get that in the public schools, so sometimes that is a surprise when they come, but I like to explain that it is a huge part of just the significant choral literature for all voices, so I feel like it's my duty to educate them in that way. And as far as treble choir, the treble choir was
and treble choir
founded
is for high voices, right?
For high voices, correct.
Okay,
yes, for treble voices.
Yeah.
And I've all of the directors that have taken the podium with Appalachian Chorale or university singers or chamber singers, to my knowledge, have dipped into the sacred choral literature at some point. And the treble choir was, from what research I have been able to do over the years, began in the 1960s under a woman called, I think her first name was Joyce Talent. Remember her?
Okay.
And then it stopped for a long time after, I think, about 10 or 12 years. And then when I came, it was actually encouraged by the students themselves. They had heard that there had been a treble choir, and they went to the dean at that time, Dr. Art Unsworth, and asked if the treble choir could be offered again.
Well, yeah, I remember you bringing up a lot of names from the past today.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right, so I have to ask you, you both chose your instrument. What do you think it is about the organ and about voices that lend themselves to the sacred setting? I mean, I know the organ is part of blues music, and
To
you're
tell you the
always
truth,
but you know, as I said, it's just sort of what I think of as the organ and the choir.
A lot of people do, and as a matter of fact, the organ and the human voice are the two oldest instruments on earth, and they have been in the church the longest. The voice, of course, came first. The organ was at first not accepted in the ancient church. It was quite a hullabaloo when the organ came out of the monasteries and started showing up in the basic parish churches. People were very upset about that. They were too loud.
Okay.
The organs were loud and they sounded pagan. But you know, fast forward to today, and a lot of minds think, well, there is no church without an organ in it. And a lot of churches still do. They still have the organ in it. But as far as the organ developed because it supported the human voice so well. You know, before the digital organs came along, or electronic organs, the pipe organ was making it sound much like the human voice does. And so those two were always very compatible, and I don't think we knew that going into it. It just happened that the pipe organ was just perfect to sing with, and the centuries went by, and the organs and the voices continued to lead church music.
I never thought about the pipe organ and the vocal instrument, but I guess they produce sound in much the same way.
They're both moving wind across flues and reeds and so forth. Yeah.
Very interesting.
And of course, the human voice is really just the purest and most historic use of music in the church. Especially alone, with no accompaniment by any instruments.
So you're both teachers, but you're also both performers. What sort of challenges do you have when you're in your performer mode as an organist and as a vocalist?
Ooh. Well, as an organist, if you want to call church performing, I've been performing every Sunday since about 1979
Well,
or
you
so.
said, yeah, when you were, we both grew up in the same hometown. You said when you were a teenager?
When I was a teenager,
you were playing in churches?
Yeah, I was about 14 years old or so, and helping out a church in town. But, you know, as a performer, I have just never been made nervous by the notion of playing in front of people. And so there is no stage fright for me. There is no stress for me. Sometimes I get a little antsy if I've come in at the wrong time, if I've played something at the wrong time, or a little too early or a little too late.
But no one knows but you.
But I'm sure no one tends to know. And so that has informed my teaching to help the nervous student understand what's going on, and who really knows what, and who's going to know about this, and it's going to be okay. And but then as a stage performer, then there is a little bit of stress, because there's traveling, there's missing class, there's making up lectures and lessons and so forth. There's learning an unfamiliar organ in about a day's time, 1 or 2 days' time. There's, you know, playing that performance, and there's getting back to town. But all of those are logistical and cosmetic. But as far as walking out on stage and taking that bow and playing the notes, I have no problems.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I've had a great time.
Yeah, you can't take your violin with you on the airplane, right?
Nope.
So you have to.
I play what's
adapt.
there. I play what's there.
Do you have a favorite organ you've ever played?
I have. That's funny. You are the third person to ask me that in as many days, and I always have to think and think and think. But sitting down and playing César Franck's organ at the Church of Sainte Clotilde in Paris was a life-changing experience because I heard the same pipes that he heard in the 1800s, and that he wrote his groundbreaking music on, that the rest of France eventually followed suit with. That was truly life-changing. It gave me chills. It really did give me chills. There's also a beautiful organ in Edinburgh in Edinburgh, Scotland, that I love very much. But closer to home, there's a wonderful historic organ in Longview, Texas, of all places, that brought tears to my eyes on first hearing. Yeah.
So Priscilla, what about vocalists? I mean, you're working with sort of unpredictable body parts sometimes, right?
Definitely.
Affected by cold and
definitely, yeah. So your question, is it pertaining particularly to sacred music, to performing in the church?
Well, not necessarily, but
Okay.
because I would think all vocalists have similar challenges too.
Yeah, well, I am very different from Joby, and I would say that most performers do struggle with nerves. And one of the things for singers is exactly what you said. Your instrument, for a singer, your instrument is in your body. It's part of your body. So you are susceptible to how you slept, what you ate, if you have reflux, if you're ill or if you're healthy, what the weather might be, how your allergies might be reacting to what the weather is. And then there's travel. If you're traveling, all of those things might shift. Singers have a reputation for being a bit high maintenance when it's concerning the state of their vocal mechanism and the state of everything around them, and that could be what informs it. It's just a very vulnerable and an exposed instrument. We have no buttons to push. We have very little other than a good technique, which is the ground of everything, that we can truly rely on. And that's both, I think, the terror and the beauty of live performance. It's never the same. And so the more seasoned you get, at least this has been my experience, the more that you have performed, say, a difficult movement or a difficult aria, the more prepared you are for whatever you're to be performing, the more your nerves can be used to your benefit. So I'm a real believer in the adrenaline really helping you, especially when it comes to selling the piece. So for a singer, the expression that is necessary on your face and the way you stand and the way you comport yourself is all a part of that package. And it's just a blast because the expectations are different for all kinds of different styles. If you're in a musical theater show, it's totally different than if you've been hired to sing, Messiah at Christmas time.
Yeah. And I guess when you're directing a choir, that's a whole nother thing because a lot of the performance is out of your control, right? I mean, you're
definitely.
I mean, you're depending on however many singers you've got up there, and they're all being their high maintenance selves, right?
Yes, that's right. And I guess I'm a glutton for awesome punishment or something. You never know exactly what people are going to do, but it's also quite fascinating and fun.
Well,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask you both a question, and Priscilla, you mentioned it earlier. So I study and teach about American religions, and one of the things, as you know, that we've noticed in the last 30 years or so is an increasing trend toward informality in worship, which affects everything from preaching styles to clothing styles to whether or not you can take food into the sanctuary. And of course, last but not least, music. Music is becoming more informal, perhaps, I don't know if more popular is the right term or not, but certain types of music, which some people call praise music, which might depend more on a couple of guitars and a set of drums than an organ and a choir. Is this something, I know it's something you've noticed, and just thoughts about it, and not whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but where's this going? How's it changed the worship experience?
Yeah, I think it has changed the worship experience greatly, depending on particular house of worship and denomination. Some denominations have embraced the more contemporary music quite a lot more than others. I think one important similarity to grasp is that there is excellence and quality in the preparation and the choice of the literature in both styles. So I have been a part of a contemporary worship service that lends itself to casual rehearsal, casual preparation, casual approach to just demeanor, and it can be sloppy. But then there are contemporary worship services which, if there's someone in charge who knows the domain of contemporary music, just as in sacred music, just as in all musics, some of it is more appropriate to the occasion than others. Some of it is, quite honestly, better composed than others. And I think it can be a very effective form of worship, especially if that's what the congregation is expecting. My own personal bias is that of one where I'm hoping that the return to formality will come back again.
Okay.
I'm trying to be diplomatic by the way I say that.
I know what I grew up with.
Right.
And it served me well, and it fed my soul. And of course, as an organist, then I'm going to be invited to play in those places that have organs, and so I saw this happening. I saw it starting up when I was a teenager, but I was never in the situation to have to choose or to have to say coexist. And so I've seen the two styles. They've been around long enough that they have coexisted, and I don't see nearly the bickering that I did when the diverging first started.
Yeah.
But I have my preferences. I have my nervous habits. I try not to walk into a church unless I'm dressed like this.
Right.
It is completely foreign to me to carry my coffee mug into a service.
Yeah.
That's just not anything I did. It's not anything my parents did, and I'm just not used to that. So I'm not going to do it. But the whole thing has informed my teaching to where I can always focus with my students on just being excellent, no matter what they've chosen to do. Make them better musicians, make them smarter worshipers, yes, because I'm going to give them a lot of church history, a lot of how we got to this point, but making them smarter and more cognizant and better at their craft is my job, and I don't insist one way or another.
Well, I think that's really a good place to end, probably. You two have been fascinating guests. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really
Thank you.
appreciate
Pleasure.
it.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Well, that's it for Religion and Life for this week. Join us again next week as we continue to explore the relationship between religion, culture, and society. Until then, this is Ozzie Ostwald.